This
archive.
conference will now be recorded.
Um, I've heard her speak a number of times, and she does a wonderful job of reminding us that not everything is online, and that so often what you want, you have to go there in person. And she'll give us a lot of ideas about places we should be looking. So thank you very much.
Okay, Melissa, it's all yours.
Thank you, Elsie, and thank you, Eric. Thank you for the introduction. And, I'm going to talk also in a minute. Elsie said something about having to go there in person to do this research. I'm going to talk to you in just a minute about how you can do this from home as well. So you don't have to go there in person. But I'm going to talk about it's not all online researching in archives and a little bit of background about why I am so passionate about records and archives is because I've been a genealogist for 34 years. I've been an archivist for 13 of those years, a professional genealogist for 20 years. And when I became an archivist, I went from being a genealogist working and researching in archives to being an archivist working with genealogists. And what I found out immediately was that many genealogists do not have a clue of the wonderful, wonderful records that are in all of our archives across the United States and across the globe. And so I kind of made it a mission to kind of tear down the curtain for archivists, and archives kind of like to hide things or not really put things out there. So I wanted to get out there and just tell genealogists about the wonderful records we can find in archives. I am a huge researcher online, so just because I'm doing this and it says it's not all online doesn't mean that we should still not do our due diligence on online records. But you're going to see some record sources I'm going to show you and some examples. There is so much more to be found sitting in our archives. So the very first thing is I want to shock you a little bit. I want to tell you that there is a statistic out there, and I've seen different numbers, that says there's less than 10% of the world's genealogical records online. Now, I really think being in the archives profession and talking to archives, visiting archives, seeing their back rooms, that percentage is probably about 2 to 3%, because there is very, very little of our genealogical records online. The rest of them are sitting on shelves in boxes in archives. So again, I believe that statistic is more like 3 to 5%. It's a very small number. I'm going to see a lot of photographs and a lot of images in my presentations. I love to show genealogists the behind the scenes of archives. This is an archives here in Tennessee. This is the Dickson County, Tennessee Archives. This is their records vault. Majority of what you see in this photograph is not online. And so every single archives have records that are not online. You may have seen this particular graphic before in the past. It is done by the California Genealogical Society. Elizabeth Gorell actually did this graphic. It is very sobering. This is an iceberg. And if you see the little white part sticking up above the water, it says the internet. That's the amount of genealogical records that are on the internet. Then you see the iceberg underneath the water. That shows you exactly how many records are sitting in our libraries, archives, courthouses, and all kinds of places. Here's another very sobering graphic. Although it's a little bit old, it is very prevalent among our archives. The Murray County, Tennessee Archives is a huge archives here in Tennessee. They have tremendous amount of records. But there was a newspaper article done on June the 4th, 2016, and what caught my eye was this particular statement. The statement was that the archives had processed 2.5 million records. Well, that right there is an amazing feat. But the rest of this is what really caught my eye. The rest of it says that they have a backlog of records they haven't processed, which means they're not online anywhere, of 4 million records in storage. So this is very typical of many of our smaller archives, our medium-sized archives, our state archives, our state historical societies, and that's why I'm very passionate about getting genealogists to seek out these records. Here's another image for you. This is the Tennessee State Library and Archives. It's located in downtown Nashville, Tennessee. This is our old building. We actually opened a very brand new building about 3 years ago. This particular building, though, is located behind the state capitol. This was my home away from home for many, many years because I did a lot of genealogy client research here. I went back to school here to become an archivist. But one day when we were in class, they asked us if we would like to take a tour of the Tennessee Supreme Court records. and we all were great to do that. And they put us on an elevator, and we went to this top floor. And there, when you got off the elevator, you were immediately surrounded by nothing but shelves full of boxes full of the Tennessee Supreme Court records that took up this entire top floor. And they had an extra building full of more records because the Tennessee Supreme Court records date back to the 1700s. And so when you're looking at buildings, you're looking at archives, libraries, historical society buildings. They have back rooms, they have attics, they have basements that are filled with records. So it's all online myth is one that's very prevalent. I don't think it's as prevalent with those of us who've been doing genealogy research for a very long time. I can remember when there was very little online when I started in 1990. But those that are just getting into genealogy or have only been doing it for a few years, they don't realize the kind of records that are sitting in our archives. So that's why I'm very passionate about it. I'm like everybody else. I love to sit with my pajamas on, my fuzzy slippers at 3 o'clock in the morning doing research. That's wonderful. And if I can find information, that's fantastic. But in order to do a reasonably exhaustive research for our genealogy, for finding information on our ancestors, we're going to have to access those archived records that are not online. So what is a reasonably exhaustive research? There's not any one specific definition. It is actually was coined by Elizabeth Shawn Mills, a fellow Tennessean, in her resource book, Evidence Explained. But it is the first listed element in the genealogy proof standard. If you've only done online research, you have not done a reasonably exhaustive research. And so it's my opinion that researching our ancestors can never be deemed complete. I've had genealogists tell me, I have finished my genealogy, I'm done. Well, if you only have a goal of researching 1 or 2 generations and not doing much more than that, then maybe, yeah, you can complete it. I am the type of genealogist that I will be researching my ancestors probably till the day I die. I want to know what they had for breakfast. I want to know what their hobbies were. I want to know everything about them because I want to tell their whole story. I think our ancestors deserve that. I think about myself and I tell genealogists, you need to write your story now because think about it. When you're not here anymore, do you want your children and grandchildren to write your story? Do you think they're going to get it right? Will they even write it at all? So that's why I want to tell my ancestors' full story. So one of the first steps in doing research that's not online is to locate where are these archives, historical societies, genealogical societies, museums, libraries, all of these places where these records are. That's our first hurdle, is locating these places. The records of the genealogy world are in the United States and across the globe. If you've been fortunate enough to what they call crossing the pond, you know that there are archives and records in places in other countries. I've been able to cross the pond with one of my surnames, but many of us don't ever get out of the United States, and that's okay. But there are records literally everywhere. So I usually tell genealogists to start at the local level. Start as local as you can get. If it's a very large metropolitan area, you might want to start at the community or the city level or the county level, and then you're going to work your way up, as I say. Here's a map of Kentucky. And you can see here it shows all of the different counties. If you're doing research in Kentucky or whatever state you're doing research in, you need to get a map that shows you all the different counties. And then find the counties that your ancestors lived in that you're going to do research in. Now, it's important that you also do some research on the formation of those counties. Many times a county was formed from other counties surrounding it. And so that's going to be important for you to know and know those dates because when you're looking for records, you may have to go to a different county to find the records. This is a map of Tennessee, where I live. This is actually from the Archives Development Directory on the Tennessee State Library and Archives website. This is a very interesting page if you have Tennessee ancestors. This is where they show you who has a county archive. Now, not all counties have a county archive in every state. We're very fortunate in the state of Tennessee that the Tennessee State Library and Archives has made it a mandate that each county have a county archive. And so out of our 95 counties right now, last time I checked, we have 77 of them have a county archive, which is fantastic. The red star there is actually where I'm located. I'm about an hour and a half due west of Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm about an hour due south of the Kentucky border. I'm about 20 minutes from the Battle of Fort Donelson for you Civil War buffs. I get to go by there all the time. It's a fantastic place to visit. So getting to the local level, the county level, to find these archives is what you kind of want to do. So when you're on this particular site for Tennessee and you click on the county page, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get a lot of information. And this is not just unique to Tennessee. Many archives have this kind of information online as well. So it's going to give you the physical address, mailing address, phone number, how I can be contacted. And it's going to give you what our holdings are. Look at there at the bottom, it says physical holdings. It talks about all the different kinds of records, which we couldn't list all of them there, and it gives you when we're open. So that kind of information is important, especially if you're wanting to visit an archive. You want to have this information. Another place to find local repositories or local archives are some websites that are out there. One is the US GenWed project. If you don't know about that, it's been around for a very long time. It is completely operated by volunteers. It is a United States-based database. It is separated by state, and then within those states, it's separated by each and every county. And we have volunteers that operate each one of those websites. There's a tremendous amount of information. If you've never been to the US Gen website, you should go there. The other one is the Family History Research Wiki. You should go there because you can also do the same thing. Look to see what kind of repositories, what kinds of records are available for each state and for each county and each community. So let's look a little bit more at the Family Search Wiki. It's a great place to find local archives, building where there are records. Now, I use the word archive, but I want you to keep in mind that many of the places that have these records, they don't have the word archive on their building, and they don't have the word archive in their name. I like to say that if they have a building with records in them that they are preserving and making available to the public, I don't care what kind of name's on the building, they are an archive, and we should be using them for our genealogy. So I'm going to show you here. You get to the Family Search Wiki. When you get there, you're going to click there on the search bar, and then you're going to enter a city, a county, a state that you want to find and archive. And so each location page will give you references and links to websites and contact information for these archives. And this is the courthouse here where I live. My archives is in the basement of this courthouse, and I put a red arrow kind of pointing to where it is. They always put archives in basements. That's just where we belong. So this is where I am located. The US Gen Web Project, it is also a great place to find local archives and local archives websites. And so go to this website and look for it. You're going to see a clickable map when you get there. You can click on whatever state you're researching in, and it will take you to a list of counties, which will give you links to their websites. Here is one for Florida. When you get there, this is their county map. And then you can click on the county if you're researching in Florida, whatever county you're researching in. And so each county page there will have a listing of records, archives, libraries, universities, and college university library and archives, government record resources, and museums, things like that, where there's records or where we can do research. Another great place is Cindy's List. If you've never heard of Cindy's List, another fantastic resource to find where these records are located. It's actually operated by a person. Her name is Cindy. And she adds to this website almost every day. It is categorized and cross-referenced, so it's easy to find information. If you go to a particular state, you can find information on those counties' resources and archives. And so great place to find these repositories. Again, she almost adds to this database daily, and it's very well organized. It's really easy to find what you're looking for, especially by location. So before you jump in your car or fly or get on a train or get on a horse, I suggest you do some things because you do not want to show up at an archive and be very disappointed. I love these two photographs. They're from my husband's family photograph collection. The one on the left are his grandparents, Lanny and Ruth Barker, from the 1940s. I love this photograph because of the car. But I don't know why, but it kind of reminds me of gangsters, Bonnie and Clyde kind of thing with his hat and her coat there. They were fantastic people. I never knew him. He died before I ever met my husband. But she was a wonderful woman. She was interesting because I would always ask her questions about genealogy, and she was one of those that would say, "Why do you want to know all that stuff for?" But fantastic photograph. And then the photograph on the right is actually my husband's father. He was an accomplished pilot. He was a private pilot. He had his own planes. And so I kind of use these to, before you drive and fly. One of the things you want to do before you actually travel is to contact wherever it is you're going. I cannot emphasize this step enough. As an archivist, I am so appreciative when people contact me and they say, "We are planning a trip. We're going to be at your archives on this day." Well, if I'm having my carpets cleaned and I'm closed that day, I can tell you, don't come on this day. You do not want to just show up on the doorstep of an archive because you may find them closed. Even if on their website and everywhere else it says they're supposed to be open, things happen. Some of our archives are operated only by volunteers. What if all of those volunteers, none of them could make it in that day? So it's important that you contact them. And a lot of these archives these days are actually requiring you make an appointment. Very interesting thing happened during COVID. When we were coming out of COVID, many of our archives started making appointments because they didn't want a lot of people in the building. Well, they seem to like that. And so since then, many of our archives have continued to only allow people to come in by appointment only. So you need to contact them and find out what is the best practice for coming to their archive. Get some contact information. Try to get a name of someone there at the archive so you have a point of contact. Email them or call them. Maybe even talk to them through their social media pages or through their website. But importantly is to communicate with them if you're going to be traveling to their repository, letting them know you're coming. One thing it also will help you with is if they know you're coming, if they know your surnames, if they kind of know a little bit about your research, they may be able to pull some records for you and have them waiting for you when you get there. That helps you, and believe it or not, it helps the archivist too. I love when I can do that for my genealogy visitors. The reason being is because it helps you as a genealogist, saves you time and effort, but it helps me as well because when you're there, I have other researchers that are there too, and sometimes it spreads me a little bit thin. And if I can go ahead and have those records ready for you when you get there, that means I can help someone else that is there and you're already looking at records. Call or email, find out their days and hours of operation. Don't believe what is on their website or their social media pages. It may be true, but like I said, they may be closed to have the carpets cleaned. They may have had a water accident in the building the night before and they're closed. They may be all volunteer and none of their volunteers can show up that day. Make sure that they're going to be there and be open so you don't show up on their doorstep and their doors are closed. You do not want to see this sign that we're closed when you have traveled, spent money to travel to these places. One thing I find genealogists don't think about till they get to a place is parking. I always, one of the first things I do is I find out what's the parking situation where I'm going. Do I have to pay for parking? Many places have pay parking now, and sometimes it can be expensive, so you better be ready. Maybe you have to park a long way away, and if you physically cannot walk that far, you need to know that. So I'm showing you another, the photograph of the Tennessee State Library and Archives again. This photograph's from about 1953 when the building was built. You can tell by the cars, the date. But I'm showing you this photograph to show you the parking situation that was here. Now, this is a state archive, a state facility in the capital city of Tennessee. You would think that they would have a lot of parking, but they didn't. They only had about 10 spaces for researchers or for anyone who's going into the building. You could not park over there on the right side where I have that X. You could not park on that side. You could only park in front of the building about 6 spaces, and there was about 4 spaces on the side of the building. Only 10 spaces. So I would have my husband drop me off, and he would go off and do some things and then come back and pick me up. Our new building that we have, the Tennessee State Library and Archives, has a parking garage in the basement with 150 parking spaces. It was one thing they made sure to get when they built the new building. You do not want to find out that you have to walk very far. If you have physical disabilities, I can tell you that if you couldn't find a parking place at this building, the next place to park was at a parking garage 2 streets away, and you had to walk up a hill to get to the building. So always check on that. Before you travel, check indexes. Many of our archives have on websites, and on their websites, they have indexes. Now, maybe it's not that easy to find. I can say this because I'm an archivist, but many of our archives do not make it easy for us to find things on their websites. Many times it's because they have so much. but you need to click through everything. You need to dig on their websites because many times those indexes are there. You just can't see them right off. One thing that's going to help you is if you go to these indexes, you find references for your ancestors. You can email or call the archives, let them know the references and the indexes. They can have those records pulled for you when you get there. Or if you're not traveling, you can contact them, let them know you found information in an index. Maybe they can digitize the records and send them to you or photocopy them and mail them to you. Record that information in an index. Write it down. Take it with you when you travel. So when you show up at an archive, you've got that information. We can do a lot of footwork online before we actually go somewhere or before we actually contact them. And so go to those indexes and look for that information because it's going to help you a lot. And sometimes our archives websites actually have a whole website search engine. Many of them are instituting that. So that also helps us find information. I would encourage you to make a to-do list, even if you don't want to. A to-do list is going to help you in many different ways. Many of us have 1,000 things we want to do when we're going to visit an archive. But you need to get your to-do list down to a 1, 2, 3, and when you get there, stick to your list. Because one of the things that I have found with myself is that if I didn't have a to-do list and I went to do research, I got back home and I thought, oh, I forgot to do this. Oh, I wish I had done that. If you do your to-do list and you go through your to-do list first when you get there, tackle all the things that you have said you wanted to do, then you would be free to do freelance research. But you'll be very happy with yourself if you will stick to your to-do list. It will help you to not get so overwhelmed because believe me, when you go to an archive and you see some of the records collections that they have and the amount of records that they have, it can get quite overwhelming. And so do a to-do list, even if you just write it on a piece of paper. A to-do list will save you a lot of time. So if you're traveling and you only have a certain amount of time to be at a particular facility, let's say you're only on a 3-day trip and one of those days is going to be spent in an archive, you need to do a to-do list so it saves you time. And it will help you to be more successful with your research because you've already sat down at home and you've looked at your research. You've looked at indexes. You've decided what records you need to try to find. So when you get there, you can look for those records. If you're doing that footwork that you need to do at home at the archive, you're taking up time. And so try to do all that at home before you go. So here's the part where I talk about if you can't travel. Many of us can't travel, or many of us don't like to travel. I actually am in both of those boats. Not that I can't travel, but I work full time. I speak, I teach, I do a lot of work, and so I stay very busy. So for me, I can't travel. The second part of that is that I don't like to travel. I do not like to get on interstates, even though my husband drives. I don't like crowds. I do not like to travel. It's not one of my favorite things. So if you're in that boat, if you can't travel or you don't like to travel, you can still be successful with your genealogy research. Again, I told you at the beginning, I've been doing genealogy research for 34 years. I have lived in Tennessee since I was 10 years old. I'm 55, I don't mind telling everyone. And all of my ancestors are from not Tennessee. They are not from here. My ancestors are from Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and all points north. For the past 34 years, I have been extremely successful with my genealogy research from a distance. It takes a lot more patience. You have to wait a lot longer to get responses, to get copies of records, to get digitized records. But I'm here to tell you it can be done because I've done it. So don't think because you can't travel that you can't do this. You can. Like I said, it will take longer to do, and you have to have a lot more patience, which genealogists are not known for. But it can be done. So don't let that deter you. You can reach out from home. I encourage you to find archives online that are where your ancestors lived. Find their websites, find their social media pages, find contact information, an email address, a telephone number, even a physical address. I am still known for sending letters. I still do it every once in a while. Any way you can contact them, you need to have that information. Again, call or email. I would encourage you to email first because a lot of times phone calls can be an intrusion on a busy day for an archivist, but try an email first. Used to, it took forever for archivists to answer emails. They're doing better. They still take a while. My rule of thumb is that I send an email, and then if I don't get an answer in 2 weeks, yes, 2 weeks. I know in this time where we have everything instant, that seems like a very long time. But I wait 2 weeks and then I will send another email. If I still get no response, then I'll pick up the phone. Picking up the phone for me is not the first thing that I do. I try to do email because I know that these people are very busy people, and I think they would prefer to have an email rather than a phone call. And so that's my process. I do an email, wait 2 weeks, do another email, and then if I don't hear anything after 2 weeks again, I'll pick up the phone. When you are talking to an archive, a genealogical society member, a historical society member, a museum, even a government office, when you're making a request, either it's email or by phone or however you're doing it, be specific with your request. Be as specific as possible. I know many of us have requests that don't have any specifics. We just don't have that information. But if you ask them for everything for the Smith family, you will not get a response. I guarantee you, you will not get a response because I don't respond to requests like that. I may respond with, I need more information, but you're not going to get records. You're not going to get very much help. So when I say be specific, you need to give names. You need to give as specific dates as you can. Do not call them and keep them on the phone for an hour with your family history. They have so much more work to do and so many other genealogists to work with. And so you're not the only person they're working with. As much as we'd like to think that we're so special, they have a lot of people they're working with. So just be specific with your requests. Again, don't ask for everything for the Smith family. This is a huge mistake and one that you will not get any kind of success with. I know we want everything for our Smith family or whatever family we're researching. I do. I want everything. But it's going to take a methodical research process and being specific with our requests. The staff is there to help you. They really, really are. They want to help you, but you have to give them the tools to help you with. They want to help genealogists. Just if you aggravate them, then they're not going to help you. If you're not specific with your request, they really can't help you. And so be specific with your request. Be patient because, like I said, they're doing a lot of work on a daily basis. As archivists, we don't just work with genealogists or researchers. Many times we are having to do reports that we have to turn into those who hold our purse strings. We're doing all kinds of other work that takes up our time. This is a big one. Be patient. Many of us who do online research, we want everything instant. I can remember back in the day having to send off a letter to request records, and I would have to wait months and months for a response. Today, we get on our computers and click, 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 and it's there. And so many of us as a whole, our patience levels are a lot lower than they used to be. I like to think back to my ancestors when they used to mail off a letter and it would take a month or 2 or 3 to get there. And that was normal for them. So we just need to be patient, whether we're calling them on the phone, talking to them by email, or talking to them through their websites or their social media pages. We need to try to be as patient as we can. These archivists, whether they are historical society members, which I love historical and genealogical society members, they have so much knowledge. They get many, many requests on a daily basis. Yours is not the only one. And so you may be put in line behind some other requests. They will get to you. Again, give it a few weeks and then contact them again, kind of remind them of your request, but be nice and be patient. Many, 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 especially today, of our archives are understaffed. Many times it's because of budget cuts. Believe it or not, I encourage genealogists to use archives, especially for one main reason, not only for the records, but because if you don't use them, either their budget will get cut or they'll get closed down altogether. Almost all archives keep statistics, and we have to report those statistics to those who give us our budget. If they see that we do not have people visiting, calling, emailing, or using the records in our archives, we are in great danger of having our budget cuts because they think, well, nobody's using it, you don't need this money. So many of our archives are understaffed. So again, another reason to be patient and understanding. Many of our archives are all volunteer. Many of them are volunteers, and we love our volunteers. This lady here is Miss Ann Sykes. She was a volunteer for my archives for many, many years. She unexpectedly passed in 2016, and I miss her every day. But we have volunteers, and they go out of their way to do what they do for us as genealogists. And so we should keep in mind that they are doing this out of the goodness of their heart. They don't get paid a dime to do what they're doing to help us. They are hardworking, so please show respect to them. Let them know how much you are grateful for what they've helped you with, even if they haven't helped you find anything. At least they tried. So be nice to them. Say thank you. I'm a huge proponent of thanking people who have helped me, whomever they are, and however it is they've helped me, because they hardly ever get thank yous. So thank them. Appreciate them. I'll put here, say thank you, and chocolate is encouraged. I actually have had people give me chocolate as a thank you, but you don't have to send them anything. Just a thank you, even a thank you card would be appreciated. So that's kind of my overall thing about genealogists and working with archives and researching in archives, whether that's in person or from a distance. So now I'm going to get to the really good stuff. This is the stuff you probably came here to see. This is going to be some records that are typically not found online. I think you'll be surprised, but I hope it encourages you to go to these archives or to reach out to these archives and work with them to try to get a hold of these records for your ancestors. It would actually be very much impossible for me to list all the different kinds of records that are not online, or very few of them are online, digitized and online. But I'm going to show you some that I hope will get you excited. First and foremost is vertical files. Sometimes they're called subject files. Sometimes I've seen them called morgue files. These are not going to be where you can see them. Majority of the records I'm going to show you today are not going to be in the research area where you sit down at the tables. They're going to be in back rooms. And so that's why I encourage genealogists that if you're going to visit a facility, ask or make an appointment for a tour of that facility. If you get a tour of the facility, they take you through the back storage rooms, the work rooms. You will get a very good sense of how many records, what kinds of records they have, and I think it will change your mind as far as the records that are available. So what are vertical files? They're like a hodgepodge, or um, all kinds of records that are documents, photographs, original records stored in filing cabinets. And then those filing cabinets have file folders in them. And each file folder will either have a surname or a subject name on the file folder. And so, and then there should be an index of vertical files. It could be on the archive's website that you can find that index. Very easy to find your surnames in an index. But when it comes to subject things on a vertical file, what kind of subjects would you be interested in? Well, if you're researching the school that your ancestor went to, there may be a file on that school, or maybe there's a file on a business that they frequented, or a church that they went to. These are places where a lot of different pieces and pieces of ephemera, photographs, newspaper clippings. This is where a lot of these are filed. If you've not done research in these kinds of records, original records could be in these files. I've seen original birth certificates, original death certificates, original photographs dating back to the 1800s in these files. And again, almost all of our archives have them, so we should be researching in them. Next is manuscript collections. This is my absolute #1 records collection to do research in and to process in the archives. I also believe that the manuscript collections is the #1 underused records collections by genealogists. Either they don't know about them, they're intimidated by them, they don't know how to navigate them. And so I'm constantly talking about manuscript collections. So let me describe to you what a manuscript collection is, and I'm not going to use an archives definition. I'm going to so you'll understand. I want each of you in that room and online to think about the genealogical records that you have in your possession for your ancestors. Many of us have a little, many of us have a lot. So I want you to think about, you have vital records, birth records, death records. You have old family letters, a collection of old family letters. Maybe you have some scrapbooks, some diaries. Maybe you have that quilt that your grandmother made, or your mother's wedding dress. Maybe you have a lock of hair from an ancestor. I want you to take all of that material, and I want you to put it in boxes and carry it down to the archives and donate it. That is a manuscript collection. And so I want you to keep that visual in your mind when you're doing research, because I find more stuff for my ancestors in these kinds of records collections than any other collections. Sadly, there's very few of these types of collections that are digitized and online. Here is a manuscript collection. This is a very small manuscript collection. This is the Lyle Family Records Collection. This was brought into our archives and donated. I took a picture of it as an example of what could be found. The Lyle family had a mercantile back in the 1800s, so there's an old ledger book there in the front right. There are photographs, there are newspaper clippings, there are receipts, invoices. All of this is original records. None of this has been microfilmed, none of this has been digitized, and it is sitting in my archive for anyone to research in. All original records. So this is what I talk about when I talk about manuscript collection. This is the kind of stuff, original stuff you can find. Next is loose court records. These are phenomenal records, and many times genealogists don't even know that they exist. So we as genealogists will do research in court records. Even if your ancestor didn't commit a crime, you still need to research in court records, because there was tons of other business that was handled within the courts that wasn't a crime. And so many of us know about the docket books or the minute books, these very large, heavy books that we find information about our ancestors in. Now, many of those have been digitized and are available on Family Search, which is fantastic. What many genealogists don't realize is that there is another part of the story. If you find something in one of those minute books or docket books, there could be other records to go with what you find. And these are loose court records. These are working papers or accompanying papers to go with that particular court case. So here's an example of that. This is W.V. Pulley's probate file. Now that's probably the one set of loose records that many genealogists are familiar with, are probate records. And so this is his file. Now his will and his probate filings are recorded in a bound volume. However, this is the working papers from his probate. These are the affidavits, the subpoenas, witness statements, heir statements. Maybe if the estate was being contested, a lot of paperwork about that. None of this is in that bound volume. These are found separate in file folders and in boxes, and you'll need to ask the archivist about them. If you find any kind of a record in a bound volume, you need to ask the archivist, do you have any loose files, loose packets, loose records associated with this particular case? Next are scrapbooks. I absolutely love scrapbooks. Anyone who knows me knows I love scrapbooks. I love to look at them. To me, they're like time capsules. You don't know what you're going to find until you open them. I've been known to travel to go look at scrapbooks. I know I don't like to travel, but I'll travel like to the next county to the archives if I hear they got some scrapbooks that have been donated. I just love to look at them. There are all different kinds of scrapbooks out there. I do a whole presentation on scrapbooks. I have found that they are unique and one of a kind, many times because they're put together by individuals, which are all unique and one of a kind. I have found original documents found in scrapbooks. I have found original death certificates, original marriage certificates, original photographs, original letters, all kinds of wonderful original documents in scrapbooks. If you can't find a scrapbook for your ancestors at the archives, I would encourage you to look at the neighbors' scrapbooks. Many times they clipped out stuff out of the newspaper that included your ancestor and pasted it into a scrapbook. Or maybe they went to the same dance or the same event locally that your ancestor went to, and you can find a program or something in the scrapbook. Scrapbooks are phenomenal, and again, not very many of them are digitized and available online. Here are some scrapbooks that I wanted to share with you. Many times you're going to find scrapbooks that have nothing but newspaper clippings in them. They're fantastic. Why? Well, if you've ever had the experience that I've had where you're on the microfilm reel at an archives and you're headed for a particular newspaper issue, and you get to where that issue is supposed to be on the microfilm and it's not there. It wasn't saved. It wasn't microfilmed. Well, hopefully someone locally clipped stuff out of that issue and put it in their scrapbook, and then you can find what you're looking for. And so these are phenomenal and original scrapbooks. Oral histories. Have you ever thought about looking for oral histories in archives? Because many of us have them. They are going to be in different kinds of forms. Maybe they're just a transcribed oral history on paper. Maybe they are on VHS, maybe they're on CDs, DVDs, maybe they're just audio, but they are out there. We in our archives here, we have oral histories. Many years ago, our local historical society sat down all of our surviving World War II veterans, and they interviewed each and every one that was surviving at the time. We have those. They are video and audio, and they are a treasure for us. They also sat down locals in the community who were elderly, who were older, and remembered growing up in the community and remembered a lot of different things about the community. And they interviewed them, and we have those videos and audios as well. So oral histories, again, you may only find them in print form. Maybe they were just they interviewed them and they just copied it or they typed it out. But veterans, local historians, individuals giving you the information. Maybe your ancestor did an oral history, or if not, maybe you can listen to one and they can talk about the place where your ancestors lived. It may not be your ancestor, but your ancestor lived in the same place, so you can get a taste of what it was like to live there. Photographs. Now, I will say photographs are probably the number one record source that many archivists try to get digitized and online somewhere. The rest of the stuff I'm showing you, they're not as fast to get it digitized and online, but they do try to get photographs online. The reason being is because they're very visual. It will attract researchers. Again, we're always trying to get people to come to our archives, use the records. And so photographs is one of the ways to do that. All of our archives have photographs. If you're looking for a photograph of your ancestors, there's probably one sitting in an archive somewhere. These are fantastic resources to find. They have photograph collections. So where are you going to find photographs when you're researching in an archive? Well, you can find photographs in vertical files. We just talked about that. You can also find photographs within manuscript collections. We just talked about that. Or many archives have their own photograph collections, and they're going to be separated out by surnames, subject names, things like that. You can find an index. They probably have one that you can look at. But I also encourage you to check out their unidentified photographs. Now, all archives have folders, if not boxes, of unidentified photographs because as photographs are donated to us, just like a lot of you that are sitting here, you have not putting names on the back of your photographs. They come to our archives that way. And so we don't know who they are, so we have to put them in unidentified. If you are very fortunate and you have photographs of your ancestors or you know what your ancestors look like, look at these unidentified photographs collections. You may be able to help the archives identify some people, and we would be very grateful if you could, because many of us have lots of identified photographs. Maps. Many of our archives have maps. I am what I call directionally challenged. I cannot look at a map and figure out where I'm at in a box. But many of you can. And if you're also researching your ancestors' property, or you're trying to figure out where they lived or where their school was located, was their church located, especially if it doesn't exist anymore, maps are going to be very important to you. Many of our archives have maps in their collections. Again, these maps are large, as you can see from this photograph, so they don't seem to get digitized. And so they're going to be sitting in our archives and not necessarily online. So those could be property assessing maps, plat maps, road maps. Maybe you're looking for a particular road that was mentioned in a document for your ancestor. And so maps, ask about maps. It's not something I find that genealogists ask about very often. This is one of my favorite maps. This is actually a hand-drawn map made by Miss Frances Henson in the early 2000s. It was a map of a place called Danville, Tennessee. This is in our county, and it is still there today. However, it is much smaller than it used to be. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of the Tennessee Valley Authority, or TVA as we call them. But back in the 1940s, they were creating a lot of dams. They were flooding a lot of areas and creating dams to help with flooding issues. The town of Danville, which was a very robust, thriving community, was tasked with being flooded. And so in 1943, the Tennessee Valley Authority flooded the town of Danville and created Kentucky Lake, which is on the Tennessee River. And so Miss Frances lived in the area at the time, and in 2002, she actually hand drawn this map of what it looked like before the flood. It's not to scale, obviously. Her drawing is amazing, but I love this map because it shows us of time and a place and some place that is actually underwater today. Ledger books. This is another thing that you're probably not going to find very many online, but it could contain information for your ancestors. Ledger books, there are all different kinds of ledger books. Many entities use ledger books to keep records, to keep accounting, to keep all kinds of information. So these ledger books could be a store ledger, a lumberyard ledger, a doctor's ledger. Actually, just about a month ago, we had 2 doctor's ledgers from the 1940s donated to our archives. What is in a doctor's ledger? Well, it gives, each page has at the top their patient's name and then all of their accounting. When they came to the doctor, did they have a baby and they had to pay for having the baby? Maybe they got their vaccine and they had to pay for that. Yes, this is medical records, but it is old medical records, and these people are no longer with us. But doctor's ledgers could be very important to you. School ledgers, these are also fantastic. Sunday school ledgers, any kind of ledger book. Many times, our local businesses, our civic groups, our social groups, churches, schools kept these ledger books. Now, what you're going to have to find when you look at these ledger books is most of them are not indexed. So you're going to have to look through them. But put this on your to-do list, something to look for in the archives where you're doing research. Ask them, do you have any ledger books for any of these types of entities? And this is where I'm going to tell you about the fact that not all of these records are even in the archives yet. We're talking about records that are not online yet. I'm talking about now records that aren't even in the archives yet. There are records sitting in people's basements, attics, closets, drawers, government buildings, all kinds of places that either have been forgotten or haven't even been opened in decades. And so when genealogists tell me I can't find anything for my ancestors, I'm done with my genealogy, I've looked everywhere, you really haven't, because there's records sitting in these places. This is a photograph that I took back in 2014. Our local county historian, Miss Nina Finley, had been our county historian for decades. She was a local educator. She was a superintendent of schools. She was on our local alderman board. A very wonderful lady. She was one of those people that you could mention a surname to, and 3 hours later, she is still telling you about that family. Very knowledgeable, had been researching her entire life. She passed away, and a few weeks later, her son called me and asked me if I would like to have her research records out of her attic. She had been telling me off and on that she had some records to bring me. What I didn't realize is that it would take 2 truckloads to get it to me. This is what I call fresh from the attic. Still in all the original boxes she had them in. Since then, we have actually reboxed everything in archival boxes. We have arranged and indexed things, and it's ready for researchers. However, none of this is online, none of it's digitized. There are a few indexes. We are still working on this collection. So this is the kind of stuff that could be sitting in someone's attic that has your ancestors' records in it. Here's another story to tell you. As a county archive, I am responsible for all of our county department records. It could be the highway department, the assessor of property, our trustee, the county mayor's office. And so when it comes time for them to get rid of records or clean out a space, they call me. So our highway department is fixing to move out of their old building into a new building. And they said, you need to come look at these records. What do we need to do with them? And this is the records. They were up in a loft area that there was no stairs to get there. So I have no idea how they got them up there, but maybe by a piece of equipment. And they said, would you like to, they put up a ladder, you can see it there on the left, and said, would you like to go up there and look through the records? I said, no, you can get those records down to the floor level for me, and I'll be glad to go through them. So they got a piece of equipment, and they got all the records down for me. And I was able to go through them, and we got out of them what we felt were historical and genealogical in nature. Some of the records had no names on them. They were strictly financial records that we could actually destroy because of our retention schedules for the state of Tennessee. But this is another example of we never know where records are going to be found. There are records being donated to archives on a daily basis. Photographs, original records, scrapbooks, old letters, diaries. And so we need to be looking for this stuff. So researching online, it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I love being able to research online, and when new records databases come on, I am there and I am looking. But we've got to remember that it's not all online. We have got to go to these archives, or we've got to contact these archives and work with them to get access to the records that they have. Don't be afraid or intimidated to work with these archives. Sometimes I find genealogists get kind of intimidated, or they don't know exactly how to do it. Best thing you can do is be specific with your request. Check out their website, make sure there's not an index or something that you can access and get a book number, a page number for the archives, and just talk to someone. Talk to them by email, by telephone, and develop a relationship. If you have a family that has lived in an area for a long, long, long time, you're probably going to be working with that archive for a good while. So get a contact person, develop a relationship with them, share your research with them, then they'll put that in a vertical file for the next researcher that comes along. And remember, it's not all online, so contact or visit an archive today. Thank you for attending this presentation. Please visit my blog, A Genealogist in the Archives. I write about all kinds of wonderful archives subjects. You can also find me on Facebook. Just look for the Archive Lady. And my email address is there. You can email me, and it's also on the handout that I sent. With that, I'm going to turn it over for any questions that we might have. Eric, we got any questions there?
There's someone here?
Yeah.
Dolly has a question.
Okay.
I have my grandmother's day-by-day financial records for her family and the family business from 1929 through 65. She was in Portland, Oregon, which is close to us. And I called the Historical Society and they said, we have so much in the archives which we have not even looked at. It would just go in a box and nobody would see it. So I know I have a treasure, but I don't know what to do with it as the family becomes less interested in looking at it.
Yeah, that's a very excellent question because it brings up an issue that many genealogists really need to be thinking about. I get asked all the time, what do I do with my genealogy stuff? My kids don't want it. My grandkids don't want it. What do I do with it? And I'm not talking about stuff that's copied off the internet. I'm talking about what you're talking about, original stuff. And so the truth is that many of our archives are full. They're not even accepting things much anymore. And so I encourage genealogists now, before they pass on, to find a place for it's hard. It's hard to let go of it, I know, but you need to find a place. So you've contacted one place, but I would continue. I would encourage you to contact other places. Contact the state archives. Also, what you can do is you can also digitize it yourself. Many of our archives now are not accepting physical items, but they may accept a thumb drive with it digitized. And so, that's another option. But yeah, it is a very real thing. Many of our archives are full and they're not accepting things.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a question?
I have a question. I have recently found some links to Montgomery County, Tennessee.
That's
Do you
not very
have-
far from me.
Yeah, right close to you. Do you have a name of anybody or where I should start with those records? All I have seen is some tax records so far.
I would encourage you to contact the Montgomery County Archives. Sarah, and I can't think of her last name off the top of my head, but Sarah is the archivist there.
Oh,
They
okay.
have a website. They have a Facebook page. I would contact them.
Thank you.
I see a
I
couple of
have a
questions.
question.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I put it in the chat also, but
I was fixing to go
is
there.
is there a difference between vertical files and manuscript collections other than the format they're stored in, the vertical file versus the box?
Actually, there is a huge difference. Vertical files are in file folders and in filing cabinets, and within those file folders are bits and pieces. Okay, and so and once the file folder gets a particular size, it could even be turned into a manuscript collection. Now, manuscript collections are in file folders and in boxes. And when it comes to manuscript collections, one collection of records, I showed you the Lyle family, that probably took up 2 boxes to archive. Manuscript collections a collection could have 1 box of records, or it could have 500 boxes of records in one collection, whereas a vertical file will have whatever's in that file folder. Manuscript collections, vertical files, like I said, are tidbits. If you have a surname, it could be something, a newspaper clipping donated by this person, a family group sheet by this person. A manuscript collection is usually a collection of records that were donated by an individual, a family, a particular civic group or a particular social group, a local business donated their records. So normally all of those records will stay together in one collection within a manuscript collection. Hopefully that gives you a little sense of the difference.
Yes, thank you.
The other question in the chat is from Steve. He wanted to know, do you suggest require visitors going through archival records to wear gloves to protect records? I get that question all the time. In the archives world, gloves has been kind of like the egg controversy. One year they're good for you, one year they're not good for you. We have finally, for the last decade or more, settled on the fact that you do not need to wear gloves when you're handling records, except when you're handling photographs. The reason being is because when you're handling documents and you have gloves on, you lose the textile sensation in your hands and in your fingertips, and you could actually damage a document faster that way than if you're just holding it with your hands where you can feel it and how you're holding it. Now with photographs, our oils and dirt, even though you have clean hands, will transfer to those photographs, and over time, when they're handled by lots of people, they can deteriorate. So we have people wear gloves when they handle photographs, and anything else, we just tell you can handle it with your hands. That isn't to say that you might run into an archivist who wants you to wear gloves for everything, but the majority of us, that's how we do it.
I can say we visited Tennessee and been to many counties and many archives and historical societies. And I had a cousin that did an awful lot of research in Knox County. And when I went to the archives, they said, well, we have a lot of her research here in boxes, but we haven't had a chance to go through it. So we actually went to the Historical Society, and they had many of her letters and many of her actual family group sheets and that kind of information was available. So look at different places, because different places might have different parts of the research.
That's a very good point. 2 things. All archives have unprocessed records sitting on their shelves. They usually have a backlog. And I encourage genealogists to ask archives about their unprocessed records. Now, archivists do not like researchers to get into those records because they're not processed yet. However, I know this. I follow a lot of authors who write books, and they gain access to these records. And so I feel like we as genealogists, so when you go into, this is my tip, when you work with these, don't tell them right off the bat you're a genealogy researcher. Just tell them you're a researcher and see what happens. Like I said, you may not gain access, but you might be able to have the archivist look in there for you and let you know what's in those boxes. And then what was the other thing you talked about? I've lost my train of thought, but you asked about something else that made me think about. Oh, you said archives, different archives. Many places have more than one archive. Remember what I told you what an archive is: a place where there's a building that has records. And I will always tell people to ask the question, where are the records? Talk to historical society members. Those members are very knowledgeable. Records may be in a building, they're not even really open to researchers, but they're in an abandoned building somewhere. They're going to know where those records are because they live in the area. If you go to one historical society, they may also have a museum in the area or a county archive. There may be records at the local county historian's house. You just don't know where the records are located because many times, like we just talked about, a lot of our archives are full. So they get stuffed wherever they can get stuffed. And so you just have to keep asking where the records are located.
Melissa, we have about 10 people in the room, in addition to those people who are logged in. So your audience was a little larger than it seems.
Well, I appreciate you having me today. If you are looking for another speaker at some point, please let me know. I would love to come back. I love to talk about archived records. So,
Any other questions?
Well, we've been to Knox County Archives, and they had so many records that we wanted. We filled out all the research slips, and they were very knowledgeable. They said, okay, we don't have time today to look them up, so how about if we just send them to you?
and that's a
So,
good point. That's a very good point about, contacting ahead of time, letting them know what you're wanting. Maybe they can have them pulled for when you get there. Or, researching from a distance. Once you've left Knoxville, I hope that maybe you're continuing to work with them and still getting some records.
Anything else?
well, sometimes if you look at for probate records, you're looking at, I found it was actually in Iowa, but my great great grandmother's husband's probate, it had all kinds of little notes and pieces of paper, things that she had signed to show that she had received her payments. Um, she had not learned how to read and write, but I noticed that was the first thing she could write her name. So there's all kinds of other things stuck sometimes in probate records besides just the will and the court documents.
Oh yeah, those loose records I talked about, I do a whole presentation on loose records because so many different record sources have loose records, like the probate records, court records, marriage records, deed records. And in those loose records are all original records, like you said, little pieces of notes, letterhead, handwritten letters or notes from the person you're researching, all original stuff that you just don't find anywhere else.
Well, thank you very much, Melissa.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful.
Thank
You
you.
had a really good talk.
I hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving.
You too.
Stop the recording.
Yes, we'll stop the recording.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see.